just in case. We're actually going to shoot for 60 minutes here on this hangout with you all. But I had asked for 90 minutes because invariably, you know, somebody, not to any fault of their own, has trouble getting on the hangout, and so we sometimes start late. But not the case today. Not the case today. So thank you very much, everybody, for getting on the hangout and giving yourselves a few minutes buffer. So for those of you that I haven't met, my name is Ruben Nieves. I'm PCA's Director of Training. I've been with PCA in some capacity or another since 2001. The organization was founded in 1998. As the Director of Training, I oversee, support, and oversee our team of 200 plus contract trainers around the country that facilitate our live workshops. And I did meet Karen and Colleen, as Kelly did. We got to meet just a few days ago in California. That was wonderful. And now I'd like you to meet my colleague Kelly Kratz.
Hi guys. So my name is Kelly, for those of you that I have not met, and I live about an hour west of Philadelphia. And I was a contract trainer with PCA since 2009. So from 2009 to 2014. And then in 2014, I was hired on staff to work with Ruben as national lead training staff. So my role now is to train all the new trainers, all the new people that want to come on board and become trainers for PCA. They have to go through me first. So I set up this training course per se. That's a little bit like an online college course that you might do. Similar to that. I was a teacher for many, many years, and I just thought, hey, let's just use this format and see if it works. So I have a course syllabus, and I do it as an online Google group. So you guys sort of skip that step. But one of the most important parts after learning the content and after, which you have done, I know Ruben sent you guys lots of resources. So when he turns you over to me for the trainer course, I do a series of question and answer on a Google group there's 5 different units, one for each part of the workshop. And the main goal of that is just to get your experience, the trainer's experience, the coach's experience into the workshop and work on facilitation skills, communication skills, and the big picture. And then Google Hangouts are a big part of it. So I do a lot of my training through Google Hangouts. And then at the end, I have the trainers do demonstrations for me. They do 3 of them for each portion of the workshop. And that's how I kind of get a sense for how they are and how they would be in a live workshop. And then we send them out to do a portion. The first step is for me to send them out to do a portion of the workshop with a certified trainer. And then we go from there and see if they're ready to fly on their own. So that's me.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah.
And can we go around the horn, and can you give us a quick introduction, or in the case of Karen and Colleen, a reintroduction? And I'd like you to, we got to be brief, right, so we can get into our training. But if you would tell Kelly and me your role at the university, and your career or coaching or sports experience that you think is most relevant to this project that you all are taking on. Can we start with you, Karen?
Oh boy. Thanks, Ruben. I'm Karen McConnell. I'm currently serving as Dean for the School of Education and Kinesiology. So I'm kind of been the behind the scenes negotiator and organizer of some of this stuff. And I am participating because it's important to me to know who our partners are and to know what this is about. And so I can support it fully and be behind it 100%. But amongst the team around the tables, I'm probably the least experienced when it comes to coaching directly, in that I've done none. And I don't plan to. But I think what I bring to the table is lots of years of experience of training teachers. So I've done the trainer activities, but I'm training teachers. And so it's a similar but different set of skills, I think. Mm-hmm. Just a different audience. So that's me.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Colleen, you're up.
I coached intercollegiately for 17 years, both at the Division I and at what is now the Division III level, multiple national championships. I have year 27 of my Success Soccer Camp, which is for boys and girls ages 6 to 17. Then I'm involved in coaching education with a number of national organizations for more than 3 decades. And I've been involved in youth sport clinics in a variety of sports.
All right, that's enough. That's enough.
Yeah.
Wait, she just got started.
I'm doing clinics when I'm with various national teams, because part of our community outreach is doing community youth sport clinics. So again, just forever. I'm done.
Okay. All right. We're gonna let you slide into the group, Colleen. Thank you, Colleen, for playing along. Nikki, do you mind going next?
Yeah, sure. I'm currently in my 2nd year as an associate professor of kinesiology. My background in sports is I played a wide variety through high school. I was a 3-sport athlete. I have coached at the youth level for 2 years, so it was girls soccer. I also was an assistant coach at Gwen and Mercy, which is close to Philadelphia, for 2 years there while I was in graduate school.
Yes, cool.
And then I have been a part of Colleen's Success Soccer Camp. I was a coach, I believe, for 7 years. And then I had my daughter, who's now 3, and I'm going back and forth between whether or not I would want to be involved as a coach when she starts playing. So after reading your books, you've given me a lot to contemplate regarding that question.
Great.
I have a feeling you're going to get sucked into coaching at some point. whether at some point, I just have a feeling. Thank you, Nikki. And then Nikki, what's your last name?
Martin.
Okay. And then the group of 3 that's together, if you guys could go next.
Hi, I'm Terry Farrar. I'm an assistant professor at Pacific Lutheran University. I am the pedagogist, so I work primarily with the teacher prep students, and our focus being on becoming PE and health teachers. I've been a PE and health teacher for 25 years, primarily middle school, high school, but I have taught everything from kindergarten through the university. I am also a Success Soccer coach, so I think it's 9 years. I know, we got to get the plug in. My focus of coaching has been primarily high school sports. I have coached from like 5, 6, 7-year-old T-ball all the way through. I did 6 years of community college volleyball, and my sport is softball. I think if I've calculated right, between softball, basketball, and volleyball, I've coached for about 30 years.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. You know, when we look for trainer candidates, we love seeing a breadth of experience. Terry, as you described there, you know, different ages, different sports. Because as a PCA trainer, you know, you're going to be in front of the equestrian coaches one week, and then the next week you're going to be in front of the wrestlers, and then the next week, you know, you're going to be in front of the board of directors for the Little League. So, okay, so who's next? Thank you, Terry.
I'm Mallory Mann. I've been at PLU. I've been back at PLU now for 5 years, and my role at the university, I guess the most relevant course that I teach to what we're talking about now is the coaching effectiveness course. I played college basketball, was a 2-sport athlete in high school, played college basketball at PLU. And then I coached at the college level, both Division I and Division III, for 5 years, and then went back for my PhD, primarily because we were getting it wrong a lot, and I wanted to be part of getting it right, or teaching those who wanted to go into practice in our field how to sort of use evidence effectively, and be better at whatever it is that they were interested in doing. I've coached a variety of different sport camps for 15 years as I was sort of playing and coming up. And I too have coached at Dr. Hacker's Success Soccer Camp. So there's a common theme, and we're all proud to be a part of that.
Yeah, because the theme is I know talent when I see it.
Wow,
Not
evidently.
for how many years, but I did win the farthest traveled coach one year.
Wow.
So I'm proud of that. Yeah, I guess I'll sort of stop there.
Wonderful, Mallory. Thank you and welcome. Well, five of the six of you sound pretty good. Let's hear from number 6.
Hold on, I'll bring it down a little bit here. I'm Charlie Katica. I'm an assistant professor at PLU. I teach exercise physiology, biomechanics, and I also teach the adaptive physical activity class here as well. Growing up, I played a range of sports, but my coaching experience started in strength training, strength and conditioning. I had about 4 years experience, both at high school and collegiate level with strength and conditioning. And for the past 10 years, I've been coaching wheelchair basketball. So I started at University of Alabama, and then I coach here at a kind of recreational team, Tacoma Metro Parks has adapted rec program. So I coach, like I said, it's been 10 years coaching wheelchair basketball. And then I'm a newbie at Success Soccer Camp, but I have 1 year under my belt at Success Soccer Camp. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. And Charlie, your last name is Paddock?
Katica.
Padicka?
Katica, Katica. Yeah.
Thank you. And so to compete in wheelchair baskball, do you have to have a disability or?
Yeah, classifiable disability. So there's a range between kind of classifications through that. So it could be anything from kind of at the higher level of functionality to it could be a drop foot to amputation at 4 or 5 to a fairly high kind of thoracic spinal cord injury at kind of the lower functioning at a level of class 1. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for telling us a little bit about you all. Colleen had warned me what an impressive group you were, and she wasn't kidding. Kelly's making you a little nervous? Makes me a little nervous.
I'm just trying to figure out why I'm doing the teaching here.
Okay.
I'd rather just sit and talk for the next hour.
We'll do our best.
I just like to sit and talk for the next hour and just learn from you guys, actually.
We'll do our best. When we train trainers, as Kelly mentioned, typically a trainer gets to go through a sequence of hangouts with Kelly, either live like this one or pre-recorded. And much of what Kelly would do in that series of hangouts, we'll get to do in person this weekend. But I still wanted you to get exposure to Kelly, and I asked Kelly to take what she shares with folks in that hangout series and give us the highlights, consolidate it. I asked her not to worry so much about content. There's other places where you're getting the content, and I asked her not to worry about anything. Sometimes she'll talk about some of the PCA logistics of being a trainer, logistical stuff, procedural stuff, and so we're not going to worry about that. And she's going to focus mainly on and she's going to focus on the Double Goal Coach 1, Coaching for Winning in Life Lessons workshop. That's her course. It does focus on that. Are there any questions from the group before I turn it over to Kelly?
No, I don't think I have a question, but just for sake of clarification, Ruben. So our group is in essence missing, so to speak, or passing over a certain part of the training. Is that how I'm interpreting that? And so we're getting a preview of that?
Yeah, yes. We are passing over a certain part of it, but we're replacing it with something else. Kelly's trainer training has very little live component. and it's done in hour chunks, 1 hour chunks. We're gonna spend 2 full days together, and we are gonna have you, practice facilitating pieces of PCA workshops this weekend. Samantha and I will do a little bit of modeling for you, and then we'll invite you to get in front of the group and, hey, take us through something on the Elm Tree of Mastery, or take us through how a coach might introduce a mistake ritual. So Kelly, answer Karen's question better than I did. Clean up my answer for me. Are they skipping stuff?
So Karen, I think the biggest thing that you'll be skipping is what I like to do is have, because let me frame it this way. Our trainers are not full-time trainers. They all have full-time jobs, and they're doing this, and most of them have a full-time job, and they're coaches and they're trainers. So the amount of time they have is limited. And so what I do is I have the course is set up so that it's self-paced. So they go through each unit at their own pace. So the Google course that I was talking about, it's really set up so that they're focusing on one principle a week. Now, they might take 3 weeks to do filling emotional tanks, but I have it set up in like weekly units. The only thing that I would say you're missing, for lack of a better word, is the concentrated effort on how are you bringing your experience into the workshop. So I like to spend, that whole week, there's 3 different questions that they have to answer. And, one of them could be, how are you challenged with honoring the game in your experience? I want them to really draw upon their own coaching experience, or the way they have been coached, or the way that they've tried to coach kids and it hasn't really worked out well. So bringing that component into it is really important. I also like to have the trainers think about any way to communicate that is better than lecture, because a lot of coaches and a lot of people do a lot of talking, and we all know that's not the best way to do it. The thing that always cracks me up is that we're coaching coaches is what we're doing. And I say to new people all the time, because, when people get nervous and they default to using these slides as a teleprompter, and they just read everything. Even if I tell them to keep the audience engaged and active and participating until I'm blue in the face, they default to telling. And Kelly,
Kelly, sorry to interrupt you. When she says they, some of the they that default to that have been college professors. Okay, so we're not going to hold that against you, but we've seen college professors come in and bring great lecture skills to this process. Back to you, Kelly.
No problem. So one of the things that I really try to help the new trainers understand is to really engage the coaches. And again, it's a hard format because I'm doing it through Google Hangout. They're going to have to translate that to real coaches in their room. So a lot of it is, how do you read the group? How do you see when they're interested in something, or when you should move past something else? How do you know when the story you're telling is too long? And how do you know when they really need a story to connect to the topic emotionally? How do you know when to get them up out of their seats, moving around, talking to others? And how do you know whether to quit that because it's just not working? So, that's a difficult thing to teach. But I think over the course of 6 weeks, they get message bombardment like crazy from me. So I feel like by the end, they're like, oh, I get it now. I finally can understand. So I think the only thing you're missing is squishing it into 2 days with Ruben and Sam versus having, 6 weeks to kind of live with the material and think about it. And a lot of the trainers have told me that while we're doing emotional tanks, that whole week, I tell them, think about how you're filling tanks in your life all the time. Notice where people are filling your tank. Notice the benefit of filling other people's tanks. So they actually get to focus on that topic for an entire week, or however long it takes them, and so they can make it real.
Okay, great.
I don't know if that helps.
It does.
Yeah. One other thing that's different is we're working on 4 different workshops at one time.
Yeah.
And so I started to say, the total amount of hours probably that you all will put into this is close to what someone would put in going through Kelly's course, if we count the 2 full days. But the one caveat is that in Kelly's course, it's all focused on coaching for winning and life lessons. It's, and whereas we're working on four certifications at once. So, okay, I think we've taken enough of Kelly's time here with this warm up and intro. Kelly, let's get into it.
Yeah. So one of the things, and again, Ruben said, this is kind of an awkward situation because you're not necessarily going to be going out talking to youth coaches. But one of the things that I'm going to be talking to you guys about is exactly how we communicate to youth coaches. And as I said before to Karen, we're coaching coaches. So I would never expect a coach to talk to a group of 8-year-old basketball players and tell them how to shoot a basketball. I wouldn't just tell them, you start with telling first, you put your elbow in, you're going to follow through, you're going to rest the ball gently in your hand. But if you could tell them for 4 hours how to shoot a basketball, and if you never give them a chance to actually do it, they're not going to be able to go out and do it. So it's the same thing at our workshops, and that's how we set the tone for our workshops. You are participants. This is a workshop. You've come to work. We're going to wrestle with these tools. I want you to be challenged. We know that this is not your full-time job, and 90% of the coaches that we get in front of are volunteers. So what can we do as PCA to compel these coaches to change their behavior, or we want to give them reinforcement to keep doing what they're doing? Because there's some phenomenal coaches out there, and we want them to know that what you're doing is right. Even if the scoreboard's not always showing it, what you're doing is right. Because our goal is coaching for winning and life lessons. And if the coaches are not focusing on both of those goals, I mean, you can focus on life lessons, and that's wonderful for character development, but your players will never learn the sport, and they might miss out on a little bit of resilience and grit and mental toughness, or they focus on winning, and we all know the problems with that we're going to get to later. So that's really the beginning of how we start the workshops. And again, I asked Ruben, do you want me to go through it as if I were doing a workshop, or are you just here to figure out how to do it? So what I would love to do, what I do for every workshop, is I get the coaches to stand up right away, right off the bat. And I have them stand up in the room. We make a timeline on the room according to how many years you've been coaching. So I will start with, if you've only been coaching for 0 to 5 years, you're going to stand on this side of the room. And then I'll have them line up all the way across the room so that the most senior coaches are at the end of the line. Now, if it's a bigger group, I might have them split into 2 groups and make it a competition to see which group can line up according to years experience of coaching first. Anything I can do as a competition raises the energy level, gets the coaches excited, and we're dealing with sports coaches. So they're generally competitive. So I like to just raise the energy level in the room right away. And it also sets the tone because these workshops are usually in the evenings. So after everybody's had a long day and a long practice, then 7 to 9 o'clock, you've got to come listen to this lady speak about coaching. So whatever I can do to kind of crush that mold, that idea that this is going to be a 2-hour class or a lecture or clinic or presentation, I like to blow that out of the water as soon as I can. So my question to all of you is, usually I ask the coaches, what's your goal in coming here? I usually say, what's your biggest challenge? And what's one of the things you'd like to accomplish before you leave? So I would like to put that out there to some of you, even in this setting. What is one thing that you would like to get out of this next, almost hour of going through this workshop? Now, on a Google Hangout, just to let you know, only one person can talk at a time. So if 2 of you chime in at the same time, we're only going to hear the first one that was the quickest. So, but I would like to hear from a few of you. What is your goal in being here? What do you hope to get out of this today?
I think a goal for me is just to learn how to utilize the most effective techniques for teaching youth sport coaches how to teach the athletes to win in life and life lessons.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks, Nikki. Someone else.
I think for me, my big thing is helping with strategies. I have, just coaching wise, I have from 19 to almost 50. I have wounded veterans and then individuals with congenital disabilities. It's trying to figure out kind of strategies to help reach both those different groups of people. So.
Yes. A very common challenge among all coaches, varying abilities of the athletes, for sure. Thanks, Charlie.
So Kelly, can I jump in with something? Can I jump in with something on that?
You may.
As Kelly said, so many of the vast majority of the coaches that PCA trains are part-time coaches. Many of them volunteers. They're not professional coaches. They and they only have a certain amount of time that they can put into prepping and coaching. And so how do you, if you're a volunteer, How do you work with 20 kids with all these ranges, whether there are disabilities involved or not? There's a range, and one of the great things we feel about the double goal coach model and the 3 principles of positive coaching is that it's a good model and they're good principles for, boy, I'm going to say all athletes, all kids, all athletes. It's an approach that we think works very well, even when you're the volunteer and maybe you don't have time to get to know every little detail about each one of your athletes and their background and their family life. It's a good, safe, solid approach.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks. Colleen or Karen, anything to add from your neck of the screen?
I just am mostly interested in connecting all of the training and learning we're doing to effective integration into our program. So yeah, I just want to do PCA justice when it's my turn to lead.
Okay. All right. Karen's nodding her head. I think that means she agrees. Okay.
I do, yeah.
All right. Well, let's jump in. One of the things I love so much about PCA, and I came from a background, I was a 3-sport athlete in high school. I was actually a 3-sport athlete in college as well. I went to St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia, played field hockey and lacrosse, but I also ran track one of my years because lacrosse wasn't an NCAA sport yet. And then when I got out of high school or out of college, I was coaching at the college level right away. I coached basketball. And then I was coaching high school basketball because I became a teacher. And I was a 3rd grade teacher for 9 years, finished my master's degree in counseling, stopped and had my kids, but of course kept coaching. So the big joke was that I only became a teacher so that I could coach, which could have been partially true. So I was coaching at the college level and then coached the high school level in 2 different sports, and then was promoted to coaching my 6-year-old daughter when she got old enough to play. And one of the things I found, and any of you that have ever been in that situation, which one is the most difficult to coach?
6-year-olds.
6-year-olds. Yes. Oh my gosh. And of course, walking in thinking, I'm a parent. I was an elementary school teacher. I've never played soccer, but I can figure it out. How much harder can it be than every other sport that I played? I was really in for a rude awakening when I realized that just being a player and just knowing the sport has nothing to do with how to coach. And so when I came across PCA, I was thrilled that there was actually someone teaching me strategies of coaching because I'd never had that before. So one of the beautiful things about the Positive Coaching Alliance is we take very simple terms, very simple concepts that you can use the same language with your players, with the other coaches, with the parents, with the leaders, the kids that you're coaching, even at 6 years old, can use terms like filling tanks and flush it. And I want to honor the game. And that's not how we do things here. And I'm speaking from experience because I've seen kids all the way through. Those 6-year-olds that I'm coaching just graduated from high school last year that I started coaching. And it's really cool that so many of them still remember, oh yeah, Coach K, I remember we were in kindergarten and you taught us the flush. And I'm like, yes, I did. It's so cool. So that for me was super exciting. And that's the beauty of the program. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to develop double goal coaches in all of you. And I'm here to tell all of you that you already are double goal coaches. The extreme of one or another is where we have trouble. Sometimes some of us are more leaning on the life lesson side. Some of us are leaning more on the winning side. Some of us, in moments when our team is playing beautifully, we are on the life lesson side because everything's going well and everything's great. And we're making these great little human beings just work so hard and they're all great teammates and we're patting ourselves on the back. It's crunch time when it's a high stakes game or it's in a tournament or it's against an opponent that we have trouble with or we've struggled with before, that we the arrow sort of turns more towards the win at all costs. And so we're going to talk about that as well. So as I said, I don't have time in this format with you to go through the entire workshop slide by slide, but just to give you a scope, I'm going to have like my trainer hat on. I should have actually brought a hat. That would be a good idea. I'm going to have my trainer hat on where I'm the trainer in the room. And then sometimes I'm just going to stop and just kind of explain like why we do this and how we do it and some other ideas. Does that sound fair?
Yeah.
Simple enough to do? Okay. All right. Stop me at any time. So the beginning of the workshop, and as Ruben said, I'm going to assume that you already have gone through the content, which I know that you have. But the beginning of the workshop is just to set up credibility. So a lot of the slides that we have, who is PCA is the first one. And positive coaching, what's the idea of positive coaching? This, believe it or not, is a great question for many coaches, because when someone comes to a Positive Coaching Alliance workshop, not knowing anything about the idea of positive coaching, what do you think their first thoughts in their head are? If I said, what's a positive coach? What does this mean? What do you think comes to mind? And if we were in a workshop, I'd have a ball in my hand that I'd be throwing around the room and you'd be answering. But now my soccer ball that I kept in my workshops for years and years and years, my fluffy soccer ball, is now signed by Mia Hamm and Brandy Chastain and Julie Foudy. And I really don't want to use it anymore, but it was the only ball that I had on Saturday night to get signed. So now I have good balls. What do you think they think of?
I think they think of inspiration.
Things to your kids.
Okay, one at a time. Go ahead, Colleen, say it again.
Saying positive things to your team.
Right, exactly. What did you say? Somebody, Terry, I think you had to comment.
Kind of same thing. I just said, like, being inspiring.
Yes, being inspiring, being positive. We'll hear all these things: supportive, great, fun, awesome. Nobody ever says that positive coaching is about winning. So the beginning of the workshop right away, we start off by just crushing the theory that positive coaching is all about cupcakes and unicorns and holding hands and singing Kumbaya and printing out the participation ribbons, because we are all about winning. We want you to be successful. We want the players to be successful because we understand that sports is a great place to learn life lessons and to build character. There's probably no better place for a young person to be challenged physically, mentally, emotionally in a safe space. And that's what we're trying to create for kids. So I want you to think about this in terms of, what does your program foster? Is this something that your program has a solid handle on? It might. Some of you might say, well, we're pretty good with this part, but maybe we need help with this part. So I'm here tonight to just help you go away with tools and a new framework of mind, and you're going to know how to speak to kids and exactly what you can do and cannot do to motivate athletes. And some of it, your minds might be blown saying, well, wait, that's how I was coached. How many of you could definitely say you were coached at some point in your life by a very positive coach? All right. How many of you would say in your life at some point you've been coached by the opposite of a positive coach? And we're not going to use language on purpose. Yes. All right. Many of us have. I want you to learn from both of those experiences. And we're going to draw from both of those experiences today, because they are both just as valuable. So what we're going to talk about, again, the beginning of the workshop just gives a little bit of credibility, power of positive. We quote lots of research studies, which you guys probably love. A lot of people like that. We're hitting all learning types. So we're hitting the researcher, bookworm nerds. We're hitting the Sports Illustrated people that have never cracked a book. If it wasn't in a magazine, that's the only thing they read. Just to give them the background that positive coaching is not just a whim. It's something that is backed by research, backed by the best practices of coaches. We show them lots of coach pictures so that they can see. I usually put this screen up and I say, okay, you might recognize some of the coaches up here. This is just a small sampling of the 200 people on our National Advisory Board. I would like you to shout out a word that describes one of those coaches. Okay, yell out a word that describes any of them.
Winner.
Okay, great. What else?
Inspirational.
Yeah, what else?
Passionate.
Passionate.
Competitive.
Yes, thank you. So we've got all these different words going around. Do you think these people would align with positive coaching if it was not showing successful results? Probably not. So, you've got people like Steve Kerr that are right on the top row. Positive coaching works for Steve Kerr. And I always say to a lot of volunteer coaches, I'm not getting paid millions of dollars to coach, but Steve Kerr is, and his job is on the line. So there's a big difference between the coaches that you see on TV and the coaches in the professional world, because their job is on the line and there's lots of money on the line. For us that are in youth coaching goes all the way up through the high school level and even developmentally through the college level for most of us. We're not getting paid millions of dollars to coach at the high school level. So this is something that we know works, and even the ones that are actually getting paid to do it understand that as well. So again,
Kelly, I'm going to
yes.
jump in with a technical
Go
thing.
ahead.
I saw Karen leaning in to see the little box there. If you move your cursor to the box that you want to see bigger, if you click on it, click on the slide box, Karen.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was supposed to mention that. Forgot.
Well, I'm adding some value here. So now you can still see Kelly and you can still see the rest of us. We're in the little box, but so you can manipulate that the way you want to.
Ruben, I thought that was a not so subtle message that I'm getting older.
I didn't comment you leaning in. I saw Karen leaning in.
Yes. Karen, that's right.
Sorry about that. I usually mention that. I forgot. So, all right. Well, in order to talk about positivity, we have to touch on negativity. And at this point, we don't want to go too much into negativity because the society will default to being negative when they're stressed and when they're worried and when they're upset. And these moments come up a lot in sports. So I love that Charlie Marr and the late Ken Ravizza talk about what this physiologically does to your body. And what I'll do is, I'm just clicking through this quickly, but I usually ask the coaches before we even start, what does negativity do? How did anybody ever have that negative coach? I want you to draw on that experience for a second. And I want you to think about something that coach did in your head. Don't say it out loud. What's something that coach did? Okay, picture that coach and what they said to you or how they acted in front of you that you still have with you. Okay, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to picture the moment when that coach said something that was really upsetting to you. Maybe they embarrassed you. Maybe they called you out on something. Okay, now open your eyes. How many of you had that happen more than 10 years ago? 15, 20, 30. I'll stop there. It's amazing that you can remember one thing a coach said to you 30 years ago. I can picture my field hockey coach in high school. I can picture the white hat she had on. I can picture the blue V-neck sweater with the green popped collar in the 80s that she wore as she was screaming at me from the sidelines saying, Kelly, if you don't stop that ball, your butt is going to be riding the bench. I played left wing in field hockey, and I can still almost feel the breath going down my neck because I played left wing, which for half of the game meant I was within breathing distance of my coach. And I will never forget that. And that was over 25 years ago. Guess when she forgot that she said that? Probably 90 seconds after she said it. And when the game was over, she got in her car and left. But 25 years later, I can picture exactly what she did to me. So coaches, you do have an impact on the players that you coach. And if we don't keep our emotions in check and we resort to negativity because we don't have the tools that we need, it can do damage that can change the trajectory of a kid's sports career and change their life actually for a while. So I want you to keep that in mind, how powerful what you say and what you do are. All right. So then again, this gets into, do you agree? Rhetorical questions. I'm not a big fan of rhetorical questions, but it is a good question to ask them why. Why is there so much negativity in sports? And again, for the sake of time, I would have them get into little small groups where they are, get into a discussion about why there's so much negativity, pretty quick discussion. And it all comes down to, pressure from parents. Usually the parent word comes up. It's all the parents' fault. That's why sports is going to hell in a handbasket. It's all parents. So again, a good opportunity for me to address that we actually do speak to the parents as well. And our parent workshops, we want the parents to develop into second goal parents. So your goal as a coach is winning and life lessons. Guess what the parents' goal is? Not to win. The parents are to focus on the life lessons portion. And a lot of times the coaches are like, yes, sign me up. This is great. And I say, you know what? Talk to your head of your organization. We'd love to come out and talk to your parents. That's my little plug for parents, because I think coaches need to know that they're not just hearing this themselves. And I also talk about, we take a systems approach at Positive Coaching Alliance. So we don't want the coaches just to walk out of the room and, be these fantastic double goal coaches and still have parents screaming down your neck. We want to be able to reach the coaches, the parents, the athletes themselves, and the leadership of your group or your school athletic directors, so that we can all be on the same page. And that's one of the great things about PCA is our language. You can all use a common language. So that's for the introduction and the background and the research and all that. Again, the vision, you guys know, better athletes, better people. I'll have them do a call and response if it's a bigger group, because I need to get your attention back. So when I say better athletes, you'll call back better people. And that's just my call and response to get people quiet during a workshop that works well. The next part, again, we have a pretty big fat introduction. I'm not going to lie. So I go through it pretty quickly because I think sometimes too much is too much. So just depending on, again, reading the group and seeing if they're taking vigorous notes or if they're kind of like snoozing out already, I might save this till the end to explain to them that, it is research-based coaching. We're going to give you tools that work. We're going to give you an email that's going to come to you once a week with talking points. We have a website called the Dev Zone. That's a great searchable database of awesome information that you can add onto your newsletters and all these things. So now getting into the nitty gritty. Okay, this is the key for you guys too. We want our goal at PCA is for every youth to have a great, wonderful youth sports experience, a positive experience in sports. Okay, because the benefits of that are exponential. And obviously, because you're here and you're coaching, you've seen a benefit of having a positive youth sports experience. So if I were to ask you, if I were to make a soup and have every one of the ingredients be an ingredient that's involved in the positive youth sports experience, what would it be? Now, at this point, I might have a sticky note that they write on. I might have, I love giving sticky notes out. I usually stick a sticky note on the front of the book, and I have golf pencils that I bring. So if I ever need them to just write down an idea, again, being the elementary teacher, I like to hit all different types of learning. So sometimes it's auditory, sometimes it's writing it, sometimes it's kinesthetic, moving up and down. But what I always do is I say, okay, if you're going to write it down, we're going to stick them up on the board and, just come up and stick it on the board. If it's a smaller group, if it's 50 coaches, I'm not going to have them all write and stick it up. But what I might do is say, I want you to call out, what do you think makes a great sports experience for kids? I might have them think first, or I might have them think, pair, share, something like that. But as they call it out, if you agree, or if you say, that's a good one, I had that on my list right now, I had that on my list too, clap once. So I always say, clap once for support. This is going to start building a rapport that when somebody in the room says something that you agree with, you just clap once. And some trainers I've seen do snap to agree. Okay. The cool thing is that when you're starting creating a culture in your workshop that when somebody says something, it's valuable. And again, throughout the workshop, I'm going to be putting in these little tiny lessons that these coaches are going to be able to use with their athletes. So for example, if I have them think, pair, share for this one, I might ask them, okay, I would like 5 people to share what your partner said. And all of a sudden the coaches in the room are like, wait, I'm supposed to share what I said. But remember, coaches, we're trying to have these athletes, we're learning life lessons. An important life lesson is tuning into your teammates and communicating well with your teammates. So we're going to see how well you did at listening. And it's really funny because some coaches had their hand up to share. And then when I said, what did your partner say? They put their hands down. And, it's great to call them out. Like, how well did we do listening to our partners, listening to our teammates? But I do talk to them about, it's a great skill to use with your teams, because how many times, any players, if you ask them a question, they're thinking about themselves. Me. We got the I generation. So we automatically want to start building in lessons that are going to make them selfless and looking at their teammates. So that's just how I would do that. The athlete experience, PCA believes there are 3 main points: connection to teammates and coaches, the belief that you can improve, and being proud about acting with integrity. And we connect these to our 3 main principles, which are filling the emotional tank, Elm Tree of Mastery, and honoring the game. And these are the principles that run throughout every workshop. These are the principles that are so simple, and we're going to help you learn how to use these and the tools to take with you to do them. So that is the information part of the introduction. And then we want to hit the heartstrings. So I love, especially the coaches, and I just found out about this. I just read an article about this recently, thinking about the fact that I personally coached 25 years ago. And then I realized some of the coaches that are coaching my kids could be my children, which was kind of a scary thought. And then realizing that they're all millennials, and how millennials think, and how they just want information fast and quick gratification. And they love storytelling because at their fingertips are all these stories. I really started training trainers to think about pulling on heartstrings through stories is a really effective way to compel these coaches to want to go out and change their behavior and be better. So I love this part of the workshop where the video, and I don't know, I'm sure all of you have seen it. I hope you've all seen the PowerPoint, right? So I don't need to show it here. But this video of Herm Edwards, and if not, I'm not going to show it now, but I'm going to skip through the videos if that's okay, Ruben, unless you want me to show them. But this video from Herm Edwards has the coaches thinking about, when the book of your life is written, will it say that you made a difference? And so the legacy that you leave behind, again, it goes back to, I like to loop back to that coach that they thought of that was the most amazing mentor they've ever had. That's a legacy that they left for you. And then we also have the coach that was the most negative coach that you had, and the legacy that coach left. So we've got both sides. What legacy are you going to leave behind? And so the next one is just, when the book of your life is written, will it say that you made a difference? And I will have them write down in their double goal coach book that they have, that I actually don't have right in front of me right now. Here it is. I'll have them open up to the front page of the book and write how they want to be remembered. And sometimes I'll make it a little bit more mushy, saying, okay, at your retirement dinner, what would you like the first group of athletes or the second year of athletes to say about you? If a Sports Illustrated was writing an article, a Lifetime Achievement Award for you, what would you like athletes to say about you? If they were creating a highlight video, what would you want the athletes, and they're going to interview 30 athletes that you coached over the last 20 to 30 years. What would you want them to say about you? So that's a part where a lot of coaches, even the ones that are being goofy or might not be paying attention very much, at that point, they get serious and they think, wow, I am making a difference here. And what do I want these coaches to say, or these kids to say about me that I'm impacting right now? So this is the model, the striving to win and teaching life lessons. Our goal is that they come together. They're not mutually exclusive. Winning is a byproduct of strong character, strong culture, and the life lessons that the kids have learned. It will lead to more wins on the scoreboard. Let's focus on the life lessons part that will lead to the win, not the other way around. My question is, as coaches, when do these two collide? Again, challenging the coaches all the time because they think, oh, we know what the answer is going to be. When do winning and teaching life lessons collide? I gave you the example before about when everybody's a double goal coach, when you're winning and your players are doing great and mom and dad are happy in the stands and the snack person remembered the snack that day. Everything's fantastic. But when do these collide? When do coaches, even with the best intentions, choose winning over life lessons? Give me an example.
When a game is close and your team is losing.
Mm-hmm. What might they do?
They might become more negative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Give me an example.
Display stressed behaviors.
Say it again.
They might display stressed behaviors.
Give me an example of stressed behavior.
Pacing, becoming more animated with their hands in a negative manner.
Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Give me one more. When else might this occur?
A critical moment in the game.
Yes, give me an example.
Bottom of the seventh, 2 outs, bases loaded.
Okay, tell me what happened.
We won.
Why would you choose winning? Okay.
Why would I choose winning?
Or how? How would you show us that you're choosing winning over life lessons in that example?
I think you might end up subbing someone, like a perceived better hitter, faster runner, those types of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe you have a policy that everybody has equal playing time until that moment. we go back on our culture. So one of the things that, and again, taking off the trainer hat for a second, I don't know, just questioning, and Ruben's excellent at this. When I ask a question in a workshop, especially in the beginning, I get the textbook answer I want to hear. And I want examples. I want to let these coaches see themselves in the examples that other people are giving. So I'm not just going to ask you for the example. I want you to be specific. I wanted Nikki to tell me specifically, what are you going to do? What's the behavior? Because we're trying to motivate coaches to change their behavior. And if they just say, oh, well, they might be a little stressed. What does stress look like on the side of the field? Well, it's pacing. It's throwing a clipboard. It's heavy breathing. I remember when I first started coaching basketball and I stopped coaching basketball because everyone could hear me. The coaches and the fans were right behind me breathing down my neck in a gym. So my next season, I was like, I'm coaching lacrosse. I'm outside. It's open. No one can hear me. But I remember thinking, when I get really stressed, I'm just going to take a deep breath. So I'd be on the sidelines and I'd go, and I remember one of my players going, oh, Coach K's stressed out. Do not talk to her right now. She's really mad. And I remember thinking, this is to help me not get mad. I was trying to use my breathing, but my players recognize, like, if she's breathing like that, it means that she is ticked off, back off from her. So I was just laughing at that. I'm like, no, this is my self-control routine. I'm calming myself down. So getting into the principles, here are the 3: filling the emotional tank, elm tree of mastery, and honoring the game. And we're going to jump right in. So that is the introduction to our workshop, and it's a lot. But by the time we're finished with that introduction part, we've hit the research, we've hit the heartstrings, we've hit the theories behind it, and hopefully we've gotten the coaches to put themselves in the places of their athletes and remember what it was like to be coached by somebody that was a really positive influence in their life and maybe somebody that was not. So that sort of sets the tone and sets the stage for jumping into the principles. I'm just going to stop there for a sec if anybody has any questions about just the intro part or wants to add anything. Wow. All right. You guys are taking Philip by not saying anything. Yeah,
Kelly,
go ahead, Ruben. I knew you were going to, Ruben. That's why I said it.
Yeah, that was for me, right? So you know, as Kelly's going, I'm jotting down some things, and here are 3 things that stand out to me about what Kelly's covered so far. And I might not put them in the exact same words that Kelly did. One is that positive coaching is about performance. it's about some other things too, but it's also about performance. And some, I think you remember when Kelly made that point, right? Creating an atmosphere that supports the best possible performance. That's positive coaching. When we go to workshops as trainers, we want to be careful about assumptions. So we don't want to come across like we assume that people are not positive coaches. We don't want to assume that I'm here to fix your coaching, because they, like Kelly said, they might be wonderful youth or high school sports coaches.
Mm-hmm.
But we also want to be careful not to assume the other thing. We don't want to assume that they know what positive coaching is and that they are positive coaches. Like I've been in some workshops where I observe trainers and the trainer will say, "I know you all do this already, blah, 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 blah." Well, how do you know they all do it?
Yeah.
They probably don't, mistake ritual. And unless you've been at a PCA workshop, I think the chances are very, very small that they know that term,
Mm-hmm.
So that's second. And then thirdly, as trainers, anything that we do that is not the trainer talking is usually good. So clearly as trainers, we need to lead. Our voice is probably going to be the voice that is heard most in the room. But is our voice the one in the room 90% of the time? Is it 60% of the time? I ask trainers to think about striving for something other than their voice happening at least half the time in the workshop. Okay, whether it's a video, whether it's them lining up by ages of years of coaching experience. It's kind of a stretch goal. Is can you 50% of the time have something happening in your workshop that is not you talking?
Thanks, Ruben.
Yep.
All right, so the principles part are a little bit different. Each principle that we do has the same format. It starts off with kind of, again, thought-provoking question, get them to think why this principle is important and what's the goal of the principle. And then it gets into a scenario that will help connect them and their experience to the principle. When have you used this? When would you be challenged by this? How could you see this working with your team? And then the last part of every principle are the tools. And I've got to tell you, all the workshops that I've done, hundreds and hundreds of workshops, the end of the workshop, we have a survey that the coaches fill out to say what was the best part of the workshop, and they write the tools. Sometimes they write, the presenter's energy was great, which always makes me feel good. But then the second thing they always write is the tools. And for a while, I was thinking, wait, all that stuff I did, and you could have gotten the tools in the book. So why is that the best part of the workshop? And it's the best part of the workshop because there's nowhere else they're going to get these things. My very first coaching job, coaching the 6-year-olds in soccer, my coach training was, here's a bag of balls, here's your schedule, you've got the field on Wednesday nights. Have fun. That was the extent of my coach training. And I had more background in coaching and teaching than anyone. But think of all these people that are like, in a situation where if you don't coach, your kid doesn't play, and they've gotten zero coach training. Even through high school, I'm actually surprised how little coach training that is given by the district, by the school district, by the clubs. The coach training that I received when I coached high school, and even now I'm coaching high school this season, was to watch a video on concussions, to watch a video on, like I had to do all my criminal record checks, to do it on just injuries. Like it was all injury prevention and concussion training, but nothing on how to motivate high school girls to play well in lacrosse. Nothing. So I think what we're giving coaches is something that they're so hungry for because they think they know what it is, but they don't actually see the results of it until, sometimes years later. So it's something that I've really been so pleasantly surprised over the last 10 years of doing these workshops, how many coaches, even at very high levels, have come back to me and said, this was fantastic. This was great. I had the rare opportunity to do a workshop at my alma mater. I went back to St. Joe's and I did a series of workshops. My Division I field hockey coach was at my workshop and I was teaching her how to coach. I mean, if that's not intimidating, I don't know what is. But afterwards she came up and she said, I got so much out of that. That was fantastic. And every time I do a workshop or I do a workshop demo and somebody asks me, who was the best coach you've ever had, most influential? I always say, Michelle Finnegan, St. Joseph's University field hockey. She was phenomenal. She was the best coach I ever had. Yet she said, I took so much out of this. This was great. So it gives us confidence. So again, for the emotional tank, I'm not going to go through these slide by slide, but important thing is that we've got to let the coaches know that filling the emotional tanks is on them. And it might not be on the individual coach to individually fill the tank of every kid, but are they creating a tank filling culture on their team, and how do they do that? So the first thing they have to do is recognize it. What does it look like? So again, I'll do some type of an activity to get coaches on one side of the room or the other, or I'll break them up into groups. Or if you're, a four corners activity, where if you're the oldest in the family, stand in this corner, youngest in the family over there, middle child over here, only child over here, something to get them in groups and talking. And you could match them up by sneaker color. You can match them up by whatever you can think of. I like to get them up out of their seats, because that introduction part, I had them up in the beginning, and then they were sort of sitting for a little while. So I like to get them up. Now, the next thing I like to do is ask them this question. Can you recognize when your athletes have an empty tank? And can you recognize when they have a full tank? And every coach will be like, yep, I got it. I know when. All right, Hal, what do you do? So just asking coaches, like they're like, yep, I got it. I know how to do. Tell me how you recognize it. And the coaches will stop for a second and they'll go, well, I think they're kind of like, when the kids are slumped over and they're tired, that means they have an empty tank. Well, true, but it could also mean they're just tired and they're just hungry, which could lead to an empty tank. But what else can happen? And so you just get coaches to kind of challenge them. This side of the room of you, you're going to be athletes with an empty tank. This side of the room, you're going to be athletes with a full tank. We're going to have a simple drill here where you have to take 5 steps forward, turn around, and go back. So there's room on the side. I might say, run 5 steps, pivot, and go back to touch the wall as fast as you can. That's a simple drill. This side of the room, when I say go, you're going to do it as if you were an athlete with an empty tank. And I've got, 20 adults on this side of the room that are like, oh, and sometimes they'll be pushing each other out of the way, and they're taking on the role of the kids they coached. And I'll have this side of the room say, what did you see? What did you notice? So for the visual learners, this is awesome, because they'll say, oh, I saw that guy push that kid. I saw slumped shoulders. I saw heads down. I saw lack of energy. Yeah. Did you ever have a kid that you coach like that? And they'll say, yeah. And they'll clap and they'll snap, or they'll, whatever they do to agree. And I'll say, did you ever equate that to maybe they have an empty tank? Because usually as coaches, if we're running a drill and that somebody's slacking and they're slow and they're not moving, what do we as coaches usually do? I'm going to ask you that. What would a coach do if you see a player slacking off?
Usually.
Are they a positive coach or a negative coach?
Well, just what would you default? What do you think you might see? Let's just say they're not a positive coach. They've never been to PCA training. What might they do?
Yell.
They might yell at them.
Call
Right.
them out.
So, yeah, come on, pick it up. What are you doing? So a kid's got an empty tank. On top of it, you're yelling at them and embarrassing them. What's going to happen to their tank? Is it going to get more full or less full? It's going to go down even lower. Yeah. So we're perpetuating this empty tank by yelling at them to pick it up. Okay. Whereas these kids over here, okay, run the same drill over here. You've got a full tank, 5 steps, pivot, turn around, and go back to touch the wall. And I mean, just the body language in that exercise, having everyone like, smile, yeah, they're high-fiving each other, and they run out and they run back, and they're like, whoo, okay. Anybody ever have players like that on your team? And every hand goes up. Yes, we want to clone them. We want them every single day. But as coaches, what do we do to those players when they have a full tank already? What do we usually say to them or do to them?
Make it fuller.
We make it fuller. We praise them. Yes, you're awesome. So think about kid with an empty tank and kid with a full tank. Just naturally, we're going to drain his tank more and we're going to fill hers up even more, because that's what we default to. So again, and I don't go through, when I have bullet points on a slide, I don't read through them, because I think if it's up there, they can read it, they can see it. And I just like to put it up for a second. What happens. You guys, showed me really clearly what happens. But let's talk about what can drain the tank and what can fill the tank. And I'm going to put them up here. These are the behaviors that drain the tanks: criticism and correction, sarcasm, ignoring, and nonverbals. These are the behaviors that fill the tanks: truthful, specific praise, expressing appreciation, listening, and nonverbals. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you, now I have the 2 groups on the side of the room. I'll ask them to come to the center and meet with a partner. Okay, so one's on one side of the room, one's on the other side of the room. They meet with a group. And I'll say, okay, what I want you to do is I want this group to explain 2 tank draining behaviors that you've actually done. And I want this group to share 2 tank filling behaviors that you've actually done. And then I want you to switch. So you're both going to get a chance to talk about, maybe you've done criticism, correction, maybe you've done sarcasm, maybe you've ignored. So I give them about 2 minutes to discuss, and they're sharing examples, and the energy level in the room just goes through the roof, because the coaches are thinking specifically about what they have done as a coach. When have they been sarcastic? When have they ignored a player? When have they used nonverbals? And it's just, I let them go through examples of different ones. I'll walk around the room. Sometimes I'll have them share out if it's a really good one, but sometimes that's the activity in and of itself. And they know specific behaviors that coaches are doing that affect the kid's behavior. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm gonna keep rolling. So again, the eTank feature tool that we want the coaches to walk away with is very simple, okay? We have a ratio of positives to criticisms that, again, we've found over, lots of different studies over the course of 20 years. You have to remember, and I know you guys are all into the studies and citing research, but the coaches in the room, they just want to know that it's backed by something. Every once in a while, I'll get somebody to say, can you send me that study? Can I hear about that? I used to be a real nerd about quoting studies and quoting years, and I was very intense and like, well, I've got to know exactly what the study is from. And I tell coaches, if you'd like to know, I'll share it with you. But I want you to know that this is a ratio of positives to criticisms that we call the magic ratio, because study after study has shown that when you hit this ratio of positives to critical feedback in a relationship, the behavior will change almost magically. So I have them guess, what do you think it is? I know you guys know it, 5 to 1. Okay, and then I give an example. All right, I would like somebody to give me an example of a 5 to 1 ratio that you would give to a player that just missed the winning foul shot in a basketball game. Go. And I don't give them a chance to think about it, and I'll just pick on somebody and they'll go, and they don't know what to say. And I put them on the spot on purpose, because the point is that it's not 5 verbal things to 1 negative thing. It's over the course of the relationship, over the course of the practice, are you 5 times more positive than critical to your players? And if you're finding that your players are not performing the way you think they should be, up the ratio. So the most effective thing you can do is just try to up your ratio. We're striving for 5 to 1. What's wrong with 10 to 0? Wouldn't that be better? Anybody think 10 to 1, 10 to 0 would be better? Let's just be all positive. What's the problem with just being 100% positive? We're the Positive Coaching Alliance. That's what we want.
It may not be actually like improving or like actually talking about and teaching kind of through that. It's just maybe just, I mean, you can, I guess, spin that positively too, but at the same time, you're not actually kind of assessing maybe their performance. You're talking through their performance.
Absolutely. Kids actually want to be taught. They want to learn. They want feedback, because most of the time they want to be better. And we're going to give them feedback that's receivable. So again, here's another quote. Phil Jackson, you can talk about him. Here's a scenario. Every principal has a scenario, and I'm going into more time about this one. I'm not going to go into the scenarios as deeply for the other principals. But again, every principal has a scenario to make this real to the coaches. So you know that athletes thrive on positive feedback, but your team's been struggling, needs a lot of correction. So basically the point is, as a double goal coach, how do you give your players the correction they need while keeping their tanks full? So this is where we talk about 10 to 0 is not what the kids need, because you're going to lose credibility and they're just going to think you're positive all the time. Giving them the critical feedback is super important, because we want it to be receivable. So now what I might have them do, what I do a lot, is I'll have them actually get into a group. And I don't teach them these tools because, again, it's pretty self-explanatory. Avoiding non-teachable moments. You don't really have to tell a coach what a non-teachable moment is. But what I might have them do is get into a group, a person, double, pairs. One's the coach, one's the athlete. And I want you to come up with a sports scenario in your sport where a kid could have made a mistake or maybe not done a skill the right way, and you need to give them feedback. So I want you to practice. There's 5 bullet points: avoiding non-teachable moments, criticizing in private, asking permission, using if-then statements. So instead of just blurting out the feedback, I want you to phrase it as, if you get out wide, then you'll be more open for the pass. Okay, use it like that. And then a criticism sandwich is sandwiching a critical piece of feedback between 2 very positive pieces. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes. One of you is the coach, one of you is the player. Come up with a scenario. And I want you to practice at least 3 of these. And I want you to role play as if it was a coach talking to the player. Go. And it's really great. And I also tell them too, you've got your book, page 40 and 41. If you want to, if you want to look in there, if you're not sure what any of these mean. I just find this is a much better way, and it's much more receivable by the coaches, and they're more willing to do it. They're more willing to use it when they leave, rather than me just explaining. They have a book. They can look it up. These are smart people. And just practicing it. And a lot of times it's a lot of laughs. It's a lot of joking around, but they understand it, and they've got the verbiage for when they go out on their field or practice tomorrow to use some of these things.
Kelly,
go.
Can I jump in with a time check for people, because we are at 3 p.m. Pacific time.
Yep. We didn't start until 6:20, so I wasn't sure how long you wanted to go.
Can you guys hang in there with Kelly another 15 minutes? Anybody? Are you okay? Karen's nodding her head.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good.
Thumbs up if you're good. Okay. So, again, what my plan was, just to let you know, was to kind of go through the the E-Tank principle. The principle structure applies to all of them. So I'm not going to sit here and go through Elm Tree and honoring the game like this as well, but I just wanted to show you what the structure was like. So again, the toolkit is what's really important to the coaches. This is what they're going to take home. This is what they're actually physically going to have concrete things to do. So again, they have it in their book. These are ways to help you reach the ratio, not you as coach, but how can you create this tank filling engine, this tank filling culture on your team? So we've got some suggestions. One of them is the buddy system. One of them is positive charting. One of them is the winner circle. An activity I like to do is get them in groups of 3. Buddy system person looks on page 35, page 39, page 41. They learn the principle or they learn the tool, and then they teach it to others and talk about how to use it. Sometimes we just do it. We just get up, and I'm going to get 10 kids up, and coaches pretending they're kids, and we do a winner circle. And a winner circle is just getting them up and having them, hey, what are some people call it shout outs, sunshine circles, whatever it is. I want somebody to tell me what your buddy did today that was positive. And we just make things up. But they can understand how to do it, how logistically it works. I do a winner's circle. I coach lacrosse. So we do a winner's circle, in the center circle. And it's funny because when I forget, sometimes we'll be down at the total other end of the field. And my 12-year-old players will say, Coach, winner's circle. And I'm sitting there going, really? It's 8:30 at night. I'm starving. I need to get home and have dinner. I don't want to go. But they all want to run to the center of the field in the center circle and hold hands and do a winner's circle. And it's just part of what they do. And they know that helps them to that's when practice is over, when we do the winner's circle, which is super cool. Other thing I like to add too about positive charting, a lot of youth coaches will say it's impossible to do positive charting. It's impossible. I only have me and 25 players. How in the world can I write down all these wonderful things they do? And I say, okay, you've got 25 players, which means you probably have at least 25 parent or guardians. And the way that I do positive charting is I hand each one of them an index card before every game. And I tell them the skill of the game is hustling to loose balls. So every time your child hustles to a loose ball, whether they get it or not, I don't care. I want you to put a tally mark on the card. I want you to put your kid's name at the top and a tally mark. And then at the end of the game, I've had all the parents doing positive charting for me for the whole game. And it's brilliant because that way I don't have to do it. The kids can run over to their parents after the game and get their cards, see all those fantastic tally marks on there, see a bunch of positive comments on there. And it's great because they've done the work for me and the parents are focusing on effort, not focusing on the outcome. All right, so for the next 2 principles, again, getting into mastery. I know you guys, know this principle probably way better than I do, but to make it simple is the challenge. How do you make a principle like this simple for the coaches that you're going to be talking to? So the key is to getting them to think about improvement. We're talking about peak performance. We're talking about improvement. So again, I'm not going to go through all this step by step, but one of the most fun activities that I like to do with this principle is to, again, get 2 volunteers. We talked about scoreboard definition of success, win at all cost coaches versus the mastery definition of success when they're talking about the effort and learning and improvement and how mistakes are okay and how to overcome them. So what I'll have is I'll have Karen and Colleen. Could you guys be my volunteers and come up? Karen, you are the scoreboard focused, win at all cost coach who's only focusing on the results. You're focusing on comparing with others and that mistakes are not okay. Here's the scenario. Okay. What sport do you coach, Karen? Make something up.
Oh, gymnastics.
Gymnastics. Wow, that's a tough one. Okay, so your gymnasts, the first 3 events, okay, they're not doing well. They're not scoring well. We thought they would come into the meet doing a lot better. So there's a break between the first 3 events and the last 3 events, and you need to give them a motivational talk, like a halftime speech, to motivate them to go back out in the second half of the meet and perform better. But you're all about the score, comparing with others, the results, and then it's not okay that they're making mistakes. You've got 20 seconds to give a motivational speech to get your athletes back there and ready to go. Are you ready? Go.
I'm supposed to do a scoreboard speech? Oh my God, I'm not a coach.
You got 20 seconds.
Listen up, girls. We're not doing a job the way we're supposed to. I know that we can win this competition and I expect more of you. Let's get out there. Let's not fall off. Let's not make mistakes. Let's get some high scores. Let's go.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. And that's from somebody that's never coached. Look at that. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. All right. So, Karen, I might have you might have just yelled that speech to the first people in the first 5 rows or something. They were your team. So I would just stop and say, okay, players, how do you feel right now? So those of us that were on the receiving end, how do we feel?
Better not screw up.
Better not screw up. So you're focusing when you go back in the second half or the next event, you're focusing on, I better not mess up. Okay. How do you feel physically?
Tense.
Ready to make a mistake.
Right. Tense, anxious. Okay. How do you feel emotionally?
Nervous.
Nervous. Okay. Now, I don't know about you, but in terms of performance, and I'm no PhD, but I don't think that I want my players to go out there tense, nervous, scared, and focusing on what not to do. I don't think their performance is going to be that great. Now, we've also have Coach Colleen here. Now, Coach Colleen is getting her team on a mastery climate. She's focusing on the mastery, what she can control, what the athletes can control. So Colleen, same thing. You're going into the next half of the meet. I want you to give the same 20-second halftime speech. The athletes have not been performing well, but I want you to motivate them, focusing on the effort they've given, the learning and improvement that's taken place, and help them to get over the mistake so that they can be clear and focused for the next event that they're going to do. Okay? Ready? Go.
I really like what I was seeing out there. I feel like you have a real opportunity to implement in today's game what we've been working on all week. I'm seeing you try to do that. I'm seeing specific examples of you doing that. Does everything always work out perfectly? No. Does everything always work out the way we prefer? No, that's part of the game. And we're just going to flush that mistake, move on, get into the next play mentality, and keep playing with the effort intensity that I've seen from you all week.
Woo! Sounds like you've done that before. All right. So asking Colleen, Coach Colleen's athletes now, how are you feeling?
Supported.
Supported, excited, motivated. What are you going to do in the second half?
Try hard.
Go for it.
Try
I'm going
hard.
to go
Yeah.
for it.
How are you feeling physically?
Energized.
Energized, relaxed. How are you feeling emotionally?
Confident.
Okay, so I'm no expert, but let me just talk about here Coach Karen's athletes and how they're going to go into the second half, and Coach Colleen's athletes and how they're going to go into the second half. Which ones do you think might perform better?
Colleen.
Yeah, exactly. The same athletes, the same skill level, the same sport. The way that we've framed the motivational talk to them is going to determine their performance. So are you creating a mastery environment? Da, 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 da. That's just a really effective activity that I like to do just to clarify. And again, then the slides go through talking about control, talking about the scenario, what happens when you have a tentative team, and then it goes into the tools, rewarding on successful effort, becoming a noticer, the mistake ritual, as Colleen mentioned. We've got a video of Curtis Granderson doing a mistake ritual. We actually have a video that I really like of Aaron Judge doing a mistake ritual on the field. He's picking up dirt and letting it go. And I like that better because it's not the talking head video. It's actually a baseball player showing how he picks up dirt and lets it go. And we've always called it superstitions, but now I change it. Now, instead of calling things superstitious, I think it's a mistake ritual. And we can notice that in athletes when you're watching professional sports or high school sports or college sports, watch it. See if you notice the mistake ritual. And I'll ask the coaches, what's a mistake ritual you do on your team? And I'll teach them about the flush, brush it off, different mistake rituals. So that's Elm Tree of Mastery. The last one, hitting home. Honoring the game. Again, this is what will help establish the culture. So I tell coaches a lot that honoring the game takes sportsmanship to a whole nother level, because instead of telling the kids what we don't want them to do, we are setting the bar up here and they are going to grow into it. So we're setting very high expectations. We believe in these kids. We believe in them. We care about them. We've set this tone of tank filling. We're helping these kids focus on mastery of their skill, not worrying about the results, because we're celebrating small wins along the way. Now we've got to make sure the integrity piece is there. And we do that by something called roots. I love the acronym roots because a tree has to have strong roots in order to be strong, so that when conflict arises, you've got strong roots in place. So the roots stand for, and I'll just go through it, blah, 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 roots, opponents, officials, teammates, and yourself. Now, what I like to do at workshops, I have, and I can grab them for you if I didn't have headphones on, but I have papers that have the letters ROOTS, and they're laminated. And I'll have them taped around in 5 different places in the room before the workshop starts. This is how I end every workshop. I want you to think, because remember, we're coaching coaches. So I want them to think as a coach, which one of these are you really intentionally teaching to your players to be respectful of? So, and I also let them know that if we're not being intentional about this, society is going to be the default. So do you really want 12-year-old soccer players to determine how respectful they're going to be of their opponents and their officials? Or do you want to teach them that? So again, I have them, the first thing is, which one do you do really well in teaching your team? When you get to that letter on the wall, talk as a group for a couple of minutes about how you teach respect for opponents or respect for officials or teammates. So they get up, they move around the room, they chit chat. I have each group share, give me an example of a time where you've showed respect. What's a little drill you do? What's a game you do? Incorporating these, remember we're talking about life lessons. So maybe you have a drill that you do and you purposely make the opponent make it unfair. Okay, how can you use an unfair drill to teach a life lesson to your players? And that's where I use a lot of these examples. We focus always back on the double goal coach teaching the life lesson. So the next round of that, I might say, okay, now, which one are you challenged with? Which one do you find very difficult and that your team struggles with? And then I'll have them switch and go around and talk about why it's so challenging. And again, it's kind of a little group therapy session. We get to vent, we get to talk about why we struggle with these things and what we're going to work on and what rules, what standards are we going to put in place for our team. And these honoring the game rules, opponents, officials, teammates, and self, these also apply to parents and they also apply to any fan in the stands and they apply to anyone coming on the field. It's not just for the players. So coaches, you need to honor these as well. And you're the best example of this. And we talk about modeling behavior you want to see. So again, this is a fun scenario. The opposing coach screaming, writing them a horrible call against your team. I love to role play this one. I love to act it out. If you haven't noticed, I like to role play a lot of things. But it just is fun and the coaches get to see. I love it when somebody gets to be the screaming, obnoxious coach on one side of the field and the other person is being the double goal coach and tries to keep their composure. Coaches in a workshop really have a great time with it. Students in your classroom would have a blast with this too. And then talk about how do you handle it. And again, here are the tools. Self-control routine, modeling and teaching, narrated modeling. This is where we hit parents pretty hard on page 49. How do you deal with parents? Parents are part of your team. Unless you coach the Little League orphans, you do have to deal with parents and they're part of your team. So put some things in place. Page 49, and I go into this pretty deep because a lot of times at the beginning of the workshop, the coaches will say, parents are my biggest issue. That's my biggest challenge is parents. And I found that out in the beginning of the workshop. So I talk about, let's get parents on your side. Let's get them on your team. Let's think of them as a helpful advocate, not the enemy. So how can we get them on our team? And I give them some tips. I have a parent volunteer at every single practice. That's just something that I've always done in my youth coaching. And I rotate it and I tell them like, Mr. Jones, your practice on Wednesday, Mrs. Smith, your practice on Friday. Even if they know nothing about the sport, they help me on the sidelines. I have a head coach, assistant coach, and then a parent every single time. And it could just be that they get the balls or they're the positive charter or whatever it is. But it has really, I don't have problems with parents, because they see that it's not an easy job. And they also see that it's really hard to do. Another fun thing I like to do is for the scrimmage at the end of practice, I have a parent official. Every single time I do a scrimmage, I have a parent. I don't care if they know the sport or not, because if they don't know the sport and they're calling ridiculous calls, it gives my players a chance to practice when bad calls are made. So I love it. I love it when my husband goes out and tries to officiate, knows nothing about lacrosse. And the girls are like, what are you doing? That's not even a call. And I'm like, respect the official, respect the official. So it's just a great opportunity for parents to realize it's really hard to officiate. And they get a lot more quiet as the season goes on. So again, this is to wrap up the workshop. Culture is the way we do things here. It's that simple. Is your culture something that if I asked any one of the players on your team, any one of the parents, do you know exactly what the culture is like on your team? Would they be able to explain it? And would they be able to model it? And if the answer is no, then you just have to do some work. We have to put in some steps that will help make this clear. Julie Foudy, one of my BFFs, as you know. No, just kidding. Positive team culture. This is a great video to wrap it up because she talks about how competitive being on the national team was, but how they were a family and they were a team. And so that's a great video to end the workshop. And then the takeaways, this is just kind of a quick review of the whole thing. Throughout this workshop too, I stop a lot and ask for questions and check for understanding. I know I'm not doing that with you, but coaches will have a lot of questions because again, this is the first time a lot of them have been trained to coach. So I stop, at least before I go on to every other principle, I stop and ask, did you understand that? Does that make sense? Does anybody see a better way to use this? So I'm always stopping and asking questions. The toolkit, again, these are all the tools that we talked about. You can find them on the DevZone website. I call this the $1,000 question. What's the most thing more coaches can do to be more effective? Everybody, and they all say, be more positive. And then again, the resources that we talked about in the beginning, talking points and the Development Zone website are great resources that we have for coaches. And that's it. That is the workshop in a nutshell. So I'm going to stop and breathe for a second and see if you guys have questions, comments, rotten tomatoes to throw at me.
And that workshop is pretty much always 2 hours.
I say about 90 minutes. I go about 90 minutes. So I leave like a 15-minute cushion on either side, like in the beginning and the end. I usually try, like my content part is about 90. So that there's more time at the end for questions, or if, you know, some unexpected thing happens, which it usually does, you've got a little bit of time. But yeah, the time block is definitely 2 hours. And what I usually say to the new trainers is if you focus on 20 minutes for each section, 20 minutes for the introduction, 20 minutes for E-Tank, Elm Tree, and honoring the game, that will bring you to an hour and 20 minutes. Excuse me. And most of the time you'll go over that anyway, but that's just a good kind of a guideline. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, Ruben, unless people have questions for me, which I'd be happy to answer. Or I'm going to go have dinner and let you answer questions.
Yeah, no, we'll just take 2 minutes to wrap up. Kelly, thank you very much for taking the time with us and taking us through this. Thank you everybody for being on time and being fully present with us. You know, I think this is a great transition from the pre-work to the live in-person work we'll do this weekend. I will ask you in preparation for this weekend to think about a section, maybe a 15 to 20 minute section of any workshop that you'll practice with the group. You'll be the trainer, we'll be your workshop participants, and you know, just to do a practice so that whenever your program gets launched the first time, you're representing PCA, and as Colleen says, doing it justice. It actually won't be the first time. You'll have already done it with your peers once, and which is the hardest of all, I recognize. So I think that's it. Any questions before we adjourn here? Thank you again, Kelly, and I'll see everybody Friday morning.
Just one quick question, Ruben.
Yeah.
For Friday and Saturday, for us as participants, what should we bring or have, or are there any expectations that way?